Hey everybody, today I want to talk about a topic that was put forward by a viewer. It is, and I apologize, I forgot to write it down. Usually I give a shout out whoever was putting their valid questions for topics, but can't find it. This one is INTJs and are we dark? Now, I found this interesting because it does ring true to me. We have such complexity that I find darkness is perceived potentially both externally and also internally. I've felt that in my past and currently where there's times where it's just that darker underlying thing that isn't necessarily, it's not tied to say depression, rage, anger, but some topics that I feel ring true to me, and I'd be interested to hear what others have to say from their perspective as an INTJ, and if the feeling of having kind of this dark underlying perspective to yourself is also there. So one thing I'm going to say from an external standpoint is the dark idea, if we're looking at it externally, it, I guess, goes against the assumption that most of society operates as keeping up with the Joneses, as well as the idea of potentially the Stepford wife that is very go with the flow, nothing that has any unique identifier ascribed to it that would draw unnecessarily bad perceptions towards her or him. So I'm going to start with that as a caveat. The piece internally that I'm speaking to myself about myself is it's very clear. We are who we are. We are very unique against, again, the societal idea of the generic individual. And for myself, it's interesting. The first thing that comes to my mind is edgy. We have an edge. This isn't to say the edge is something like a chip on our shoulder, but there's always this angle or idea or intensity. I feel that there's an element of harshness, and in general, and I'll get to some more specific points on that, but it is very difficult, and I've spoken to this before, where you want this succinct conversation or look at life in terms, and there's a frustration there that can be relayed as harsh. The idea of we're not motivated by the mainstream. So again, I've spoken about this before. It's not to say that you don't have interests that are also a mainstream type of interest. However, you don't do it because that's what the mainstream is doing. So for myself, counterculture I always found fascinating, mostly because of a sociological perspective on what makes them tick, and there's like an interest and and trying to understand the larger picture and scope of why that's counterculture. And I always find the uniqueness really fascinating, and it is an attraction to me, and I think it appeals to that darker, deeper side. For myself, very quick to judge, and it's almost like doing a snapshot. I'm not taking in necessarily. I have a tendency that if I don't take a little bit longer to look at the entire perspective, I use my intuition and my observations from the past in order to make a decision. And sometimes that might be too rushed and does not allow a fuller content about people. And we've talked about that, where we don't like that situation when it's applied to us. So it's something that is a little bit where you realize that you, for myself, is just acknowledging that piece, whether or not it's going to temper down, but more of maybe understanding. So rebellious. We've talked about this too, where rebellious doesn't mean that you're going to do whatever to make your mom or dad mad, but there's always this underlying element for myself on, why do I have to do it the other way? Why can't I do it this way? Why don't I try something different? And that can be seen as, well, it's going against what is the norm, and I like it. So the anti-status quo, where, okay, everyone's doing something, I therefore will never do that, for the fact that I'm noticing, and we've spoken to that on the trends thing, where following a trend just isn't even conceivable in the concept of doing it to fit in with what everyone else is doing. For myself, it also applies to knowing, sorry, I'm reading off my notes again, knowing exactly how to present the self we want to the world. And that can be whatever way we want. So just because someone may dress in a more conservative outfit or that type of thing, there's a very measured rationale behind such a thing. Or if you're wearing purple hair and cat contacts, that doesn't mean that there is anything that has to be judged externally. You are presenting that of your own self, and you're very mindful of doing that. The sarcasm, we've talked about that too. Sarcasm is the hallmark for myself. I love it. I love when people do it to me, as long as it's intelligent and quick. Quickness is, it speaks to basically the entire parts of quick to judge, quick to find interests, quick to learn, quick to be motivated. But quick, I think, can be dark, because quick makes perceptions could be wrong, or quick can eliminate a lot of opportunities or options from your experience. But again, because you're being quick to whatever is happening, it also can bring some really interesting, unique individuals and experiences into your life of like-minded people. We are interesting only to like-minded people. Boring vanilla people will find us arrogant and boring, because the depth of the issues that we're wanting to discuss. For myself, the dark part is also the willingness to jump into something that is perceived as outside the scope of what a gender assigned or societal assigned pieces that are, again, ascribed to us. The darkness is also with the hating boredom, hating people who drag on points. So we might look, because we're not doing the polite niceties as easily as other people or at all, that comes across as being a darker person. And the idea of conservative mindsets, closed mindsets, that is another one that's quick. The other one is disingenuous people. So people who are like, yeah, I get you, when you know, as they're saying it, it's like, you have no idea, because I've not shared any of this that is actually who I am with you. And we like the darkness also allows us to have those that are wanting to be sincere and having a unique and real dialogue spill baggage. And the integrity and privacy that we afford to ourselves, we naturally apply to other people. So the dark bit almost makes the folks, at least in my experience, feel comfortable in allowing those really dark things to come out of themselves. and not feel ashamed. So that is the high level. I want to leave with this. One thing that I find interesting about this dark that kind of resonated with me is the movie John Wick. So what I loved about it was the character of John Wick himself and how Keanu Reeves played him is, for me, just it absolutely spoke to me on the idea of INTJ darkness. And so I'd love to hear other people's comments to see if they notice the same thing. So anyways, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully we'll be putting out another video shortly. Thanks.